Kia ora. Greetings and welcome to another Whakawhiti Kōrero PBS. I'm so delighted that you've been able to join us on this call. My name is Janelle Atlas, and again, I'm one of the Pause, Breathe, Smile facilitators, and I'm based here in Christchurch. And in a true testament to the importance of mindfulness in our personal and professional lives, all day long today at my home office, I've been sitting right next door to a large fence being installed between my home and my neighbor's home. And I just went out a moment ago to say, when are the buzzsaws going to stop? I have an important call. And I just tapped into my breathing and relied on the fact that it was going to be okay, even though it didn't sound okay. So thank you again for joining us today. It's wonderful to have you here to hear some things from a really wonderful PBS educator, Rebecca Locke. But before we get to that, I want to say thank you to Southern Cross for their financial support, which makes it possible for us to bring this program completely free of charge to all primary and intermediate schools throughout Aotearoa. So I don't know about you, but I actually could use a couple of centering breaths at the end of this busy, busy day. And so let's just take a moment right now. I'd invite you wherever you are, with a cell phone or a computer, wherever you're sitting, to just find a comfortable seat, kind of find a posture that feels good to you. See if you can feel your feet on the floor, your body supported by the chair, and allow your eyes to just drift closed or to soften your gaze in front of you. And let's just collect ourselves here and now in this present moment. Let's take a few mindful breaths together. As we breathe in, we can feel our bellies expand like a balloon. And as we exhale, we can feel them soften again. Whatever has happened before now, we can let that go and just come into this moment, noticing our breathing. Breathing in, feeling our belly fill like a balloon. Breathing out, feeling it empty again. Not chasing anything, not trying, just settling, watching, noticing our breathing. Let's take a couple more breaths together. Breathing in, breathing out. Feeling ourselves here and now. And now let's listen to the mindfulness bell again. With our eyes closed, just continuing to notice our breathing. When you're ready, you can open your eyes, come back to the call. So you probably already saw that this call is being recorded so that we can share it with other people who aren't able to make it at this time. Throughout this session, throughout the next 40 minutes or so, you are welcome to drop any comments or questions or things that you would like the speaker to respond to into the chat box at the bottom of your Zoom application. You can do this anytime and we'll do our best to reply to them. And last of all, as I just said, we will finish up by 4:15. We know that time is really valuable and we want to honor your time and keep this call concise and encouraging. So thank you again so much for joining us here today for this conversation. And now without any further ado, I would like to introduce you to Rebecca Locke from Foxton School and the Horowhenua Kāhui Ako. I'm so delighted to have you here today, Rebecca. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Kia ora, everyone. Thank you for coming on as well.
Absolutely. We're so glad to have you. So the first question that I had for you is, would you be willing to talk just a little bit about your journey as a teacher and how Pause, Breathe, Smile kind of connects to or relates to that?
Sure. Yep. So as you mentioned, I'm part of the Horowhenua Kāhui Ako, And in 2018, I got a role as a within school teacher, and something that was a really hot topic at the time in our school. We were really starting to notice we'd spent so much time focusing on academics, but there were lots of children who didn't have emotional coping strategies. So I really wanted to look into this, and I formed a bit of an inquiry question about how we can build their emotional resilience, and started doing a bit of research and came across Pause Breathe Smile and thought, yes, this is such a great idea. I'd love to implement this into my school. So that's where it all began. And I really liked that it was a New Zealand program, and obviously I'd come across ones from overseas, but I went, this is great because it's all New Zealand curriculum aligned. And yeah, it all went from there. So I looked into some training, and we signed up for our Pause Breathe Smile training. But not only just my school, but we're only a small school, so we got a couple of the other schools in my area, which we call Kirikiri, which is Foxton Beach, Shannon area in the North Island. And teachers from most of those schools in Kirikiri had their training with us. We joined forces and did it together. So yeah, it meant that there wasn't just us doing it in isolation. We could share practice across schools.
That's awesome. So as a classroom teacher, how do you, now that you have Pause Breathe Smile and have been doing it a couple of years, how do you see mindfulness impacting the learners who are in your classroom? How do you see it connecting to their well-being?
Yeah, well, it's amazing looking back now and thinking we signed up for this back then to build resilience before we knew anything like lockdowns and pandemics were going to happen. And I think that has really made everyone realize how important well-being is. So yeah, I think it's just great for our learners to have a kitty of tools, of ways that they can get through unpredictable and tough times, and know that, yeah, they're going to be okay, whether that's in the classroom or outside the classroom. I know when we did when we've done the program different times, it's not just in the classroom that they reference it. Sports field, at home, a lot of them say I use it when my siblings are annoying me. So it's great to hear from them their little anecdotes about how they use it across their lives. But yeah, life's tough for all of us. Everyone has their own things that they go through. So if we can equip our children from a young age with wellbeing strategies, then we keep, like they say in the training, watering that plant, making sure that the kids know how to access those tools. That sets them up for some great success.
Yeah. So there might be some people on this call who have who are brand new. Maybe they've just received a training, just had their PLD day, and they're thinking, oh goodness, like I feel a little bit uncertain about this, or I'm not sure how it's going to go. What kind of advice would you give them as someone who's done this a few times about how to manage those feelings and what they should do when they go into the classroom with it?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a little bit nerve-wracking the first time that you do it. But I've delivered the full program technically 3 times, because I taught it in 2019, and then we did it again in 2021. But I had a hub, so I did half the class at a time, and because I was the only teacher in the hub that was trained, so I taught it to everyone. And yeah, it definitely felt a lot more comfortable the second time around. But some of the things were, always have my handbook with me. I've got one of the older ones, and I picked up a new one as well, so got both of them there. And it's amazing going through it. I've just got scribbles of stuff in there from my training, but also even just notes about some of the children and how they were going. Like Sarah said last month on her call, I also did slides as well, so it's probably a bit of a teacher thing to have that to accompany. And that just was a great visual for the kids if this is what we're doing. And just like her, inserting the videos on there, having the links all ready to go, it's really helpful. I think, yeah, you just got to stick with it, because even the kids, I interviewed a couple of children and I did a video and I said, how are you feeling after the first couple of weeks? And they're like, oh, it was weird, I didn't quite understand it. Yeah, it's definitely something that you've got to persevere with. Yeah, and definitely once like I said, once you've done it the first time, you'll be more natural with it, and find other ways to integrate it into your program.
Yeah. What kinds of I'd love to hear a little bit more about, like, what other ways can you bring it in outside of the formal lessons, to kind of normalize it and make it just a part of the day? Like, what are some ways that you found to do that?
So yeah, I'm a big believer in I know a lot of teachers are, and having everything integrated, I guess, into your reading, writing, wherever you can make it fit. So we wrote stories about overcoming difficulties, and we related it to the program and how you might drop anchor, some of the strategies that you learn in the program. And we looked at famous people and how some of them have overcome difficulties, and those classic stories like Oprah Winfrey and Roald Dahl, Dr. Seuss, Michael Jordan, all of them. And it's great for them to see in real life that people have to persevere. And so, it was amazing, the stories that the kids wrote about overcoming difficulty. And I'll always try and look for articles or stories for the kids to read, like journal articles that have some of the themes from Pause, Breathe, Smile and within it.
Right. So making those explicit and implicit connections to, just like you would with anything, right? If you're working with numeracy, then when you're reading, that doesn't mean you're not doing numeracy.
Exactly.
You're looking for those other connections.
Yeah,
that's really, really great advice.
And
so,
sorry. When you're doing the program the second time, like I find it quite amazing. It's just like when you read a book or you watch a movie for the second time. I always watch movies I've seen before. Go back to what you're comfortable with, right? And you still see new things and learn new things. And when you do the program the second time, you're like, oh, I didn't notice that the first time. Or even the children, they pick up new things, and they've grown a few years and they see things with a different lens. And so it is cool, revisiting things with the kids and for yourself.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because sometimes when I do these trainings, teachers say, oh, wait, I'm going to do the same thing, but some of the kids are going to have had it last year, if the whole school is doing it. But what I'm hearing you say is that that there's kind of a deepening, and you get different things out of it at different age levels, or maybe because if your teacher is more into maybe the science of it, or the science of kindness, or maybe some more of the applications, that each time there's kind of a different experience with practicing mindfulness.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's got to be adapted to your children and their age and what they're going to take from it. And I definitely taught it with a different twist the second time I did it, because I was more comfortable with it and just made adaptations to my learners. Yeah.
So it sounds like it's about persevering that first time, or those first couple weeks when you're kind of finding your footing with it, and it's unfamiliar to your learners, but that over time it does start to sink in.
Yeah, definitely. And like being prepared, of course, is key, and going through your notes and the videos on the website. Use those resources. I watched, definitely the first time I was doing it, I watched them quite a bit just to go, yep, that's right, that's what we're doing for this. And have my book with me. I don't think there's any shame in having your book right there while you're teaching it and referring back to it. And we've got to admit to our learners that we're learning with them, and we don't know everything. So it's powerful for them to see.
Yeah, that's really wonderful modeling. So lots of schools, as you were alluding to, are taking up well-being as a major focus, right? So like even before the last couple of years, it seems like there's a trend of thinking about and considering well-being, which is really overdue, right? And I'm really glad that that's happening. Why did you choose Pause, Breathe, Smile with other options out there? Like, what about Pause, Breathe, Smile made you think, oh, this is actually the one that I want to go with?
Yeah, well, like I said, I was really impressed that it was a New Zealand program. It had the New Zealand curriculum woven into it and made explicit in the handbook. But I really like that it's underpinned by Sir Mason Jerry's Te Whare Tapawha. I just think it's such an important wellbeing model for our children. And Aotearoa New Zealand, they should be exposed to wellbeing models that are right here, not necessarily looking at all the other things overseas. So that was a big driver for me, and actually being able to unpack Te Whare Tapawha in the classroom. And as I'm sure most of you are familiar, in the start of the handbook where it talks about setting up a wall display and making that really explicit to the children. And I like to talk to the kids about how I feel my whare tapawha, and sometimes if I've had a great well-balanced weekend, I like to say, here's how I filled my whare tapawha, and talk to them about how they're making sure that they're keeping all their posts strong. So that was, that's the main reason really, is I just like that it was a New Zealand program. And it's sustainable. It's not like you can just do little bits. You can adapt it to work for your class. Like it's been a year since I've done the whole program, but I still talk about it. Like the other day I was talking about it in reading when this kid overcame difficulty, and we talked about, at what point did they drop their anchor, and just doing the mindful tracks. It's just a couple of minutes a day, but it makes a great difference for the kids.
Yeah. And I mean, I would underline all of that. And I also think that a real strength is that you get trained, and it's not something that it needs to take. There's this huge long entry ramp where, you're doing, it's months of preparation. It's relatively concise, the, training, and then having that handbook and those resources, and that you can actually start delivering it like the next day if you want to,
Yeah.
right? You don't need to have this, it's not a huge exorbitant or really tricky thing to get on board with. So you're a real advocate for Pause, Breathe, Smile in your area. We kind of joke that, in Horowhenua, maybe you should be like a contractor for us, because it seems like you're really, you think it's really vital that your whole region take Pause, Breathe, Pause, Breathe, Smile on board, obviously throughout your kāhui. And I'm just wondering, why are you so passionate about it not just being your classroom or your school, but that you really are interested in that kind of like local ecosystem?
Yeah, well, like I said, so we have within kāhui, you have an achievement challenge, and there's different areas within that, and one of ours was all focused on wellbeing, and that's kind of how this was all born in the first place, because I was looking into wellbeing, and I had reached out to a couple of schools originally and said, like, it would be great if you guys give it a try, and some of them had seen in some of our sharing sessions. So part of that within school teacher role, you present about your inquiry. So teachers from all different schools in that area had seen what I was doing and had excuse me, had asked about it and wanted to know more. And I actually also ended up presenting in front of some Board of Trustees members back, it would have been 2019. So some of them went to their principals and said, let's do this. Why can't we do this? But it was, the big thing was 2020 once Southern Cross jumped on board, and it was sponsored, because obviously that's a barrier for some schools, is trying to fit everything into the budget. I reached out to all of our schools, and a lot of them are quite small, and I thought it's another way that we can connect and network across our schools and organise for a lot of them to have training together. So it sort of pair up schools, a bigger school and a smaller school, because we could have obviously up to 40 people in those training workshops. And I went to see one of the training workshops where we had one of our intermediate, Live-in Intermediate and Manukau School together, and I was just popping in because I was nearby just to see how it was going. It was really cool. I showed up when they were doing the mindful walking, and just seeing them all just getting right into it and letting their guard down and taking on that training. And I was only meaning to stop in for a little bit, but I just got taken by I was like, oh, I just love this, and just listening to it all. So most of our schools in our area are all trained up, but another big part of that is we're quite a transient area. And I'm sure there'll be other areas in New Zealand that are the same. And I think Pause, Breathe, Smile is great for any child, but a child who's moving around, maybe a lot of different schools, that might have some different things going on. If they're changing schools, and that school also does Pause, Breathe, Smile, and they're speaking that same language, that's like, they can just slot in and go, hey, I know Pause, Breathe, Smile. Like, that's something I can do. And we had a boy who was leaving, and he was a social worker, and that social worker said to me, one thing he referenced was he loved learning Pause, Breathe, Smile. And this kid could be a bit of a tough kid at times. Like, he's like, yeah, I'm the man. But to know that he had really taken that on board, and that was something he was going to carry with him when he was really worried and upset about moving schools, like, that just something like that makes it all worth it.
Yeah. So, thinking about that, these children are going to take it with them, but how much, mindfulness is about something that often that we do practice together, or we share that similar language. And so the idea that the more schools that are doing Pause, Breathe, Smile, particularly in a region, if a family's moving or a child's going, to a different school because a sibling is there or whatever, that they're not carrying that alone. They're going, and then they can plug back in with their mindfulness practice. So that's a real strength of having, kind of like a network or like an ecosystem of schools that are also using mindfulness. Yeah. So how, if, maybe someone's watching this and they go, okay, well, my school's the only school, within a certain radius that's doing Pause, Breathe, Smile that I know about. Rebecca, how did you spread the word? Like, how did you let people around you know about it and kind of encourage them to come along?
Yeah, well, obviously those sharing sessions was a big part. So every within school teacher would share twice a year. So I did 2 sessions to the teachers that came along to that, and principals and things like that, that Board of Trustees sharing session. And then once I became an across school teacher, so that's a different role within our kāhui, yeah, I really took that on and emailed the principals just directly to them and said, do you want to get on board with this? And tried to take away a bit of the work for all of them and organise some of it, because I thought they might get more buy-in if it was like, sweet, we'll just leave it with you and we'll just show up. Yeah, but another thing is as part of our kāhui ako, we do something called wānanga paku, and they're like little professional development sessions where we're trying to use the knowledge and expertise within our rohi. And I ran a workshop on pause, breathe, smile, and a lot of teachers who were signed up for training came along, so that promoted it as well. And then I end up getting in touch, like giving them my email so they can ask me any questions. And another thing I did was try to make a bit of a network. Last year it was kind of difficult because it was like term 3 or 4 and COVID was really, as it just keeps doing, messing things up again, and people were struggling to get together and fit time in for things. But I managed to get a few teachers from different schools in Horowhenua onto a Zoom call together, and we just had a kōrero kind of like this, where you just share ideas. And even I was sitting there like taking some notes, like, oh, I like the way that they've done that at that school. And yeah, just that's the beauty of the kāhui ako, is sharing your practice together.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I love that idea that you brought people together who were already trained, to kind of continue that conversation, and not just have it be something where we all have the same training and then we go off and do it our own way, but actually we can feed back to each other and say, oh, in lesson 3, my kids kind of struggled with this, but then I tried it this different way, and people go, oh, I can try that or apply that, right? Because that's so much of what mindfulness is like being responsive to the actual context, and every school is going to be different, and every child's needs are going to be a little bit different, and yet there are commonalities as well and similarities to share back. So I love that. I love that you're doing that. And
how amazing, I want to do it again, hopefully. Yeah.
How amazing would it be to get to do it in person? Like, here we are all on Zoom. I'm like, what if we all could get together again?
Imagine.
Imagine. It's going to happen someday. Someday it's going to happen. So, Rebecca, obviously you've taught this 3 times now, but could you talk a little bit about the personal connection that you have with mindfulness? Have you seen benefits or kind of impacts in your own life, not just as a teacher?
Yeah, definitely, especially with everything, as I keep saying, going on. I started doing a gratitude journal. It would have been 2 years ago with that first lockdown, and I could really see the benefits of reflecting on positive things when you felt like everything was a bit icky. And gosh, it's so true. You learn about the negative bias and the science behind that, and just knowing that that's a thing and going, oh my God, look at me being negative, and trying to flip the script and look for positives. I literally just played straight back soft belly before we did this, just to get myself ready. And I thought, I can go back to school and tell the kids, like, I was a little bit nervous about, and explain how I've done this. And guess what I did, guys? And we'll see if they can figure it out. But also just at school mostly, it's not just within the lessons, but I've kind of already talked about that. But even like when you're unpacking some conflict with children, referring back to it and just explaining to them. Like, I was just sitting down with a boy the other day, and he's getting a bit fed up with this girl who keeps saying stuff to him, and said, remember, like, it sucks that she's saying that, and I'm not dismissing what she's doing, but you don't have to listen to it. You don't have to take it in. Remember what we learned in Pause, Breathe, Smile about like thought trains, and you choose if you want to. Don't let it ruin your day. You choose to block that out. And so I did it to myself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's sometimes the tricky thing. Like, I don't know about, but about you, it sounds like, but, even as we're teaching mindfulness, as we're using it with our learners, I use it with my children, there will be times where I'll catch myself not using some of the things that I'm asking them to use. And so that's always a good, it's always a good reminder to say, oh, am I pausing and taking a breath? Am I checking in with my feelings and where my capacity is? Have I asked myself today, where is my well-being? What would maybe feed, what would feed that sense of flourishing? And so it's a real blessing of teaching mindfulness, I think, especially for teachers, because you have so much you have to cover, right? You have, and the day is completely full, and yet this opportunity that we have ourselves, but then also with our learners, to slow down just that little bit, instead of rushing to the next thing, and using that language and using those reminders that we have. Do you have a favorite one of the audio recordings? Are there any that you particularly like to return to? You said straight back soft belly is one.
Yeah, definitely, like that one's a go-to. And even the te reo version, I love to play that, and the kids love hearing that too. And even if they don't understand all of it, I've explained to them that it's a translation of straight back, soft belly, and just exposing them to some more te reo. They love that. I like the new ones. I'm excited to have some new ones on there. Yeah, because it's really good to have, like I used all the longer ones, like that match the lessons when I've fully unpacked the program, but it's quite good to just have those shorter ones, and that's why I like those new ones that are there, and the dropping anchor one. Yeah, and just mixing it up, not just doing the same track day in day out, just really going through, or getting a bit of feedback from the kids. Of course, student voice is very important. And I think something you said before, and it made me think about role modeling it. It's so easy to think, oh, sweet, I've got 5 minutes, the kids are doing PBS, I'll just quickly mark a couple of things. No, I always really try not to do that, because they've got to see that I am practicing what I preach. I am having that moment as well. And I think if I didn't stop and do that with them, then I wouldn't be reset and ready to hit the rest of the day, or it depends what time of day it is. So yeah, I think that's another piece of advice for newbies as well, is don't see it as an opportunity to get 5 minutes. Use that 5 minutes and you'll gain it back.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And I can see why it's tempting, to say, they're listening. Right. They're listening to this recording, and I can take care of that email, or that thing that I needed to handle. But actually what I'm hearing you say is that there's true value in in pausing yourself, even if you're even if you still have to observe what your classroom
you can't fully do it, because they're sort of like just checking, making sure that no one's kicking someone or something like that. Like I've done it before, where I'll sit there, we've got like little reward chits that we have, and I'll just write some of them out, because I can see people fully engaging in it. And sometimes you just got to do a bit of that just to get everyone on board. But when you've got the bulk of your class really into it, and that's that whole doing it over time and sustainability, I'm not having to spend time sort of going, close your eyes and trying to settle them. They just sort of do it now, and that's really awesome.
So I believe you, and that's awesome to hear. But I do wonder, what are some things, how have you handled it if someone, maybe early in the game, early in the plot, is just really struggling to settle down? Like, how do you address it individually with that learner? Do you kind of address it whole classroom? Like, how have you handled it if a child is really struggling those first couple times? What advice would you give?
I was really lucky when I did it last year. I felt like that group that I had were really into it, and that might have been because it was the second time for a lot of them. The first time I did it in 2019, there were a couple that, it was almost like, oh, I'm not going to admit that something might help me, or they shut down to it. And you've just got to persevere. And like listening to what Sarah said last, Whakawhiti Kōrero, if anyone didn't catch it, she was talking about not getting angry or grumpy with them, and I think that's really key, because you don't want it to turn it into a real negative experience. You've just got to be patient with them and give those kids a bit of time, and they might just sit back for a bit. But if they're just sort of seeing doses of it, then they might come around. And like one boy he was really strong-willed and determined that no way, this is rubbish, I'm not going to do it. But in the end, like over time, not even like after the 8 weeks, but over a couple of terms, he was needing a bit of time out sometimes, just to reset himself over in the principal's office. And the principal would put on like straight back, soft belly for him, and sometimes he'd be not happy about it. But by the time those 4 minutes were up, it was just that amount of time for him to just relax. And I guess the key of what I'm saying is, don't fight the children who are anti it. Just slowly let them join in on their terms, and then you just don't know, they might really get a lot from it, and they just don't want to admit it.
Right. So we don't want to turn mindfulness into a power struggle.
Nah, no way. No, you want to it's almost like, hey, this is what we're doing. If they're really completely thrown it off for everyone, then obviously you're probably going to need to do something about that, because you don't want to take away from everyone else's experience, and then that's when you probably need to really address it one-on-one. Another thing is, I would rely on kids in my class who'd be like class leaders, real role models, and sit them next to children who might not be quite as engaged, and hope that they would feed off of them as well.
that the power of positive peer pressure and really tapping into those student leaders who are kind of, naturally other kids want to be like them or want to follow along.
Yeah. Or even just knowing, oh, that kid's friends with that kid and they're into it, so we'll try and like let their friendship and their relationship support it. Yeah.
So we haven't talked about this, but I have to ask, we're not supposed to have favorite lessons, like we're not supposed to have favorite students, right? That's the rule. But do you have a favorite one of the 8 lessons? Is there one that you like, that one is kind of that's the one I can't wait to get to? Because I do.
You do? Yeah. Oh, I'm just looking and just going, I don't know, like straight away I think about like the kind heart, happy heart, because I sort of delve off and do some like random acts of kindness. And like I said, with integrated into literacy, I've had the kids write a thank you letter to someone as an act of kindness, or one time we planned it, like they all, for their writing, they planned their random act of kindness, and all did something different. So I do like that. And gratitude. I think some of our kids really don't realize how lucky they are and how good, like there's a lot good going on. We see there's also things that are troubling, but I think they've got to, realize how good things are. I like the neurons that fire together, wire together, because of the science connection too, and that sometimes brings people around who might have still sort of like, oh, what is this? And then you're like, oh, it's science, like it's actual science, the vagus nerve, and they're like, oh, and neurons, look at the neurons. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. If you can hook them in on their own way. Yeah,
you've got some kids who kind of need if they need that brain part, they need to understand, like, why is this happening?
It's not just something that's been made up, it's actual science.
Right. Well, I'm gonna confess right here and right now that my very favorite lesson is lesson 4, where it's all about the rise and fall of emotion and how we illustrate that, because every time I do it, I think, I wish I'm turning 40 this year, and I sure wish someone could have saved me a lot of trouble if someone had explained this to me when I was 8. I would have really liked that. So that's the lesson that really I just feel like is kind of the center of things. But obviously, all of the lessons build, each one after the other. And as you said, it's the kind of thing where from year to year, you do it one time, and then a lot of those kids that they come around to the next year, and maybe they've already seen it, and yet there's this kind of like deepening approach, or they've had new experiences that they can connect and relate to mindfulness. So it doesn't really get old. That's a refreshing thing about
I don't think it does. I mean, what's that, 3 or so years into it, I don't feel like it gets old. And because you've got new learners, like I said, a little bit transient in our area, so there's always some new children who might have moved from far away and never experienced it before, so you get that excitement of them learning it for the first time too. And every teacher does it differently, puts their own twist on it, has their own experiences. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Rebecca, I think that pretty much wraps us up. I so appreciate you sharing your time and your insights, and hopefully for all of you listening on this call, and also those who will watch it when it goes up on the Facebook page. I hope that this expertise and the stories and the information that has been shared today is encouraging and energizing to you. So thank you again for being here. So I, as always, promise that we're going to really honor your time and keep this concise and inspiring. Again, just want to give a huge thank you to Southern Cross for their support of this program, in our mission to reach all primary and intermediate school children throughout New Zealand with mindfulness to support their mind health. And as always, I invite you to join our closed Facebook group for educators. Maybe you could join Rebecca. If Rebecca is a member, you could pop on and say hello to her, give her a shout out for giving her time today. And also, it might be a way, like Rebecca was just suggesting, to connect to other teachers in your area who have been already trained in the program. Maybe you could have a group chat, to kind of share ideas, or if we're ever able to meet again all in person, you could buy each other a coffee and have an in-person kōrero. So we are just really glad that you're able to join us here together. We will have a Whakawhiti Kōrero. Next one will be in May. So keep your eyes out for that information. But thank you all so much for joining us. Take care of yourselves and each other and your learners. And we look forward very much to hearing about how things are going with Pause, Breathe, Smile at your school. So,
can I jump in with one more thing, Janelle?
Absolutely.
Sorry, you just reminded me when you said about networks, because all right, 2 minutes. Originally, when I was looking into it, I wanted to connect with schools from the get-go. So I posted on the New Zealand Primary School Teachers page and said, is there anyone local? Because I actually live over in Palmerston North. And Jackie Frost, I just want to shout out to her. She is a teacher at Tokomaru School on the outskirts of Palmerston North, and she responded and invited me to come visit her school. She'd done the Pause, Breathe, Smile training, and she really gave me some stuff to get going, and really taught me the importance of weaving growth mindset in with Pause, Breathe, Smile. It's probably something I forgot to mention in my comments today about look at growth mindset and how that marries up really nicely with Pause, Breathe, Smile. But really appreciate the fact that she took the time to do that. She actually brought some of her students out to my school for assembly, and they spoke about their experiences with it all.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
and I've just seen a question on there.
Yeah.
About
So I was wrapping up because it seems so quiet.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. So we have a question about whether there is a survey that we can do with our students to gauge the effectiveness of the Pause, Breathe, Smile program. Well, the good news is we have the wellbeing survey, which is all trained educators do before, pre the program, 4 months in and a year in, and that is basically gauging kind of teacher insight into learner well-being, and so that is very much something that we think is very important for us to be kind of studying the program, and that was designed by an independent group, not us. And I do see that it may be something where you do want to come up with one locally, where there are particular measures or particular things that you want to study, at your school, or think areas of particular interest. And we'd be very interested in hearing what you find and how that goes. But we do have ours kind of at an organizational level. And when you complete that survey, you then will get feedback on teacher well-being and learner well-being in your school. So you'll get some information back about before the program and after the program changes. Other things, lots of people are saying thank you, which is really really wonderful, and saying thank you to you, Rebecca.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, absolutely. So any final words?
I did survey my kids year 4 to 8 at my school as well, and I was just sort of going back through some of my stuff today, and it was really good to get some insights into them about how it's helped. So even if you just make yourself a Google form with key questions that you want to ask your tamariki, I got so much feedback from them that way. It's a great idea.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. And and don't forget the importance of that final lesson. So lesson 8, where, you're not really introducing new content, but you're sitting together as a classroom community, and learners have an opportunity to share what particularly stood out for them. That's a time to really jot that down and note that, to then carry forward, and to know from year to year, oh, this particular class was super into the science of, the science of kindness, and they want to do more with that. So you can always do an add-on. And as Rebecca said, we have lots of new resources that are rolling out on the website. So, those new guided audio practices, we have some new mindful movement videos that'll be coming out. So things to kind of support the integration post-program, that we don't just do it for 8 weeks and then say, well, done and dusted, mindfulness is, tick that box, right? So yeah, listen to the kids about it, whether you do an informal survey, you listen to the formal survey, and just what they say. What do they want to do more of? What do they find particularly helpful? So, well, I think we've reached a great stopping point. Rebecca, you've been an absolutely wonderful guest. You were super helpful and encouraging and articulate. And a lot of people have chimed in saying thank you so much for your time and expertise and sharing. And we just appreciate all of you being here, and very much look forward to the next time we can gather. So kia ora, and take care of yourselves.
Thank you.